about the same seat height, but as you can see, the Sherco is considerably taller. Hey everybody, it's Doc, and welcome to the channel. So today, I have a new hat, which means I have a new bike to go with it. And I have to admit that pretty much I was fully wrong about the Gas 700 ES. I thought it was going to be a good bike for me. I thought it was going to be a good entry bike for me to get into dual sporting. And the reasoning for that was the engine was big enough for it to keep up at highway speeds, and it was still lighter than the Honda Rally, I think by 10 pounds. But it just was too heavy for me. And probably the biggest issue with that bike is the gas tank is in the rear. And so it has a very wide rear end, and it's kind of tall as well. So I didn't have really good ability to plant my feet with it. So I ended up having to get off the bike to push. And then when I pushed the bike, it would knock me off balance because of the wide rear end. And then of course I also had some saddlebags on it, which did not help. So that bike is gone. It's gotten traded to my friends at Cycletech in Fremont, Iowa, and they have set me up with a 2023 Beta 390 RS. And I'm going to flip the camera around so you can see it here. So this is a very cool bike, and I haven't even ridden it. And as you can see out the window, it's snowing outside, so I probably won't be riding it anytime soon. It's still very stock, although there's been some significant changes made to it, which are going to make it easier for me, and hopefully I'll have the ability to keep this bike for a very long time because of the modifications that I've had made on it before I have even ridden it. And the main thing, as you can see, if you look really closely, because the Sherco is sitting next to it on purpose, the Sherco has a seat height of 37.4 inches, and in stock form, the Beta 390 RS would also have about the same seat height, but as you can see, the Sherco is considerably taller. So one of the cool things about Beta is actually they offer so many modifications straight from the factory that you can pretty much build whatever bike you want. And as a matter of fact, they will actually change a lot of stuff and ship it from the factory to your dealer already modified. So what I did was, first off, I dropped the suspension 2 inches. And that's a rather significant modification because there has to be a new spring, there are spacers to be applied, and I think even a new linkage, and the fork springs are also changed. So you can see that, again, it's significantly lower. And then on top of it, I've also changed the seat to a Seat Concepts Comfort lowered seat, and that also knocks about 3/4 of an inch off the bike. It is way more comfortable than the very hard piece of plastic that they call a seat that they give you. And let's talk about the bike itself before I sit on it and show you what its stature is. Beta makes actually a number of bikes that are very close in displacement, and it can be really confusing. So they make a 350, a 390, a 430, a 480, and a 500. What I know about them is that the 350 is a shorter stroke engine, so it's higher revving, and it's, if you like two-stroke bikes, this would kind of be more the bike for you. Whereas the 390 is a long stroke engine, and essentially, it's my understanding that this is almost a direct copy of stroke and displacement of the Suzuki DRZ 400E, which is basically the standard at which most adventure bikes, dual-purpose bikes, try to be. So apparently the engine's very much like that as far as rideability, and it's very much tractor-like is how it's been described to me. And then the The 430, you're looking at, again, another higher revving bike is my understanding, and then the 500 is just a big tractor as well. I think that's how it goes. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments section. You know, these bikes, you know, like I said, I know this bike because I've been riding with my friend Rob, and he's had one for over the past year. I've ridden it. It's an amazing bike, and it wasn't a long stretch for me to jump from the gas, which I was unhappy with, to this bike, because it seems like it'll work out very well for the style of riding which we have, which down in Kentucky, it's pretty much 30% highway, 30% gravel road and fire roads, and 30% trails that aren't quite single track. So it's a 4-stroke, 4-valve. It has titanium valves. It has a compression ratio about 12.5 to 1. The fuel injection is a 42 millimeter throttle body with dual injectors. Interestingly enough, it has twin oil pumps with separate compartments for the engine and transmission. And we're looking at about a 2.5 gallon tank capacity, which gives you about 45 miles a gallon. So I should have about a 100-mile range with it. And the engine makes roughly 45-ish horsepower. It's kind of nice that Beta puts some thought into things that need to be frequently maintained, such as the airbox. You can access that easily by just pulling off the panel. There's no bolts, nothing required there. And then it's just as easy to put back on, which I probably won't do it successfully on camera. There we go. And just like that. And then the seat also comes off with a push button, so you can switch out your seats or get access to the battery underneath pretty easily. And whoops, there we go. Almost tipped the bike over. And so that's nice. Battery's right under here. Very easy to get to, which is really nice. And if you're good at lining stuff up, it's easy to put stuff back on too. Doing a quick walk around the bike, obviously the first thing that stands out are these mirrors, which are actually tip-in mirrors, which are kind of nice. So when you're on the trail, you can just fold them up and they probably won't get damaged. And you have street legal equipment. We've got a really nice high-low beam LED headlight. We've got some nice tucked in turn signals front, and the rears aren't so tucked in, but that's all right because I would prefer they be out a little bit so someone behind me can see me and not rear end me. That's kind of important these days. The suspension is up front. It's a 48 millimeter SAC open cartridge fork with compression, rebound, and ignition spring preload adjustment. The brakes, there's a 260 millimeter floating rotor on the front, and on the back it is 240 millimeters. Another interesting part about this is the fact that on the engine, you have the option of putting a Kickstarter on that. And to be honest, I don't know why you'd want to, because the electric starts are so reliable now, and every bike that I've opted to put the optional Kickstarter on, I could not kick it over. I couldn't get it started kicking it over anyways, and it seems like they have to cycle pretty fast to actually get started anymore. So it's not like the old days with the old XR 250 thumpers. Another interesting part about this engine is the fact that the engine oil and the transmission oil are in separate compartments. Then we have our aluminum body Sachs shock in the back, which has adjustable rebound and high-low speed compression. The other thing to note here is the exhaust is about as lightweight as you can get for most dual-purpose bikes. You know, this bike overall dry weight is 241 pounds. That's fully 80 pounds lighter than my Gas 700. And as a comparable bike, the Honda CRF 400X weighs 35 pounds more than this bike. And this bike's already had a little bit of a diet because we took off a few things before we even prepped it. There's a Moly steel frame, which is certainly strong enough for what I'm going to be doing with it. And then on the tire side, we've got Michelin DOT approved knobbies, which will be interesting to see how they do. I think originally this bike came with DOT approved Maxxis tires, but somewhere probably mid-year they switched it out. Sitting on the bike, we have two things of note. One is the fact that we have down here, we have the capabilities of changing the maps from rain to sunshine, and then also the ability to put it into traction control, which I haven't experienced that yet. And to be honest, this is a pretty nice system because it's my understanding that you can do it on the fly and you don't have to switch back and forth, where that was an issue with the gas was you really couldn't do it on the fly, and every time you shut the bike off, it went back to a default and you had to reset it every time. So I'm hoping this bike is a lot easier than that. I really didn't care for the ABS on the Gas 700 ES, so I'm not going to miss that either. Then we go up to the Trailtech Voyager display here, and essentially you can see that there are multiple functions here. The key things we want to note is this is RPMs and miles per hour, the temperature that's currently in the room, and then you can go down to, this is our map, this is looks like water temperature, altimeter. This is some basic information as far as user information. And again, looking at it, I can see my voltage, my battery voltage, and my odometer, GPS odometer. There's more navigation functions with the compass, and then there's a stopwatch, and then back to more satellite, which it's not going to acquire any satellites because we're in Bunker Town right now. So overall, this is pretty cool. It's going to take me a little bit of learning because I'm completely not familiar with this at all at this point, which you can tell. And maybe I'll do a video on that because I haven't found a video that really goes through the Trailtech Voyager that much yet. Maybe I'll end up doing a video on how to use this once I learn how to use it, because there aren't a lot of informational videos out on the Trailtech Voyager. Something to think about. The thing that everybody's probably watching this video that they really want to see, because it's really not covered very well, is lowering the bike. You know, people mention it, but you never really see it. So I'm 5'10", 160 pounds, and when I had the gas, literally to get onto this very wide bike, I had to step up on the foot peg, and I had to mount it almost like a horse. Whereas with this bike, and this bike's been lowered 3 inches. So I took 2 inches off the suspension. So I've dropped from 11.6 inches of suspension, probably to an effective 9.5 inches of suspension. And then the seat, which now is softer and a little bit more comfortable, that knocked off about 3/4 of an inch going with the Seat Concept seat. And I won't miss the stock Beta seat. But you can see how easily I can get on the bike and how I can almost flat-foot it. So that's really good. You know, you worry about essentially if you're changing the effectiveness of the suspension of the bike because it's not exactly what the engineers designed, but in the same respect, it is a stock Beta part, and it was installed by Beta technicians, so I would assume that it's probably going to be okay. And basically, with my new style of riding, which will be essentially 30% highway, 30% gravel roads and fire roads, and 30% sort of single track, I think I'll be fine. I don't think there's just going to be an issue with clearance, and I think that with the slipperiness of a lot of the trails that we ride, because it's mostly clay where we ride, having better footing is going to be a lot more important than having more suspension. But overall, I'm very excited about this bike. It's one of those things where, you know, I've kind of tested it out because I've ridden Rob's bike. It's nice to have my own. The only thing I'm curious about is how well it's going to do on the highway part. But the reality is, you know, when we went down to the Cumberland bypass, we were doing maybe 10 or 15 mile stints on the highway before we reached another part of a trail or a fire road or a gravel road. So I think it'll be great. I'm really looking forward to it. I certainly want to thank Bill and Ben out at Cycle Tech in Fremont, Iowa. And if you're in the market for a Sherco or a Beta or a Kymco, they are the people to talk to if you're in the middle of the United States, because it's truly an excellent dealership and they've got a great product. Obviously, you see my Sherco behind me. I love that bike, and that bike's never leaving ever because it's the perfect trail bike. And I hope this bike lives up to it too. So on that note, you guys have a great day. We'll see you on the trail.